Have you ever had everything and still felt something was missing? You've lived a whole life, but have you truly felt it? There's a kind of silence that isn't peaceful. It's the silence that arrives when you've done it all, and something inside you still whispers, "Is this it?" What if that ache isn't the end of meaning, but the beginning of it? Welcome to Mindful Footsteps. This is a space for those who feel the quiet shift, the subtle restlessness that arises not from failure, but from awakening. A place for hearts who long not to do more, but to be more present. If you've ever wondered whether the life you've built is truly yours, if you've ever paused long enough to hear that sacred whisper within, you are already on the path. Like this video if something stirs in you. Share it if someone you love has felt this too. And subscribe to Mindful Footsteps, where the journey home begins not with answers, but with awareness. Now, take a breath, and let's begin. Together. Part 1. The Fog of Busyness. When doing becomes a disguise. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you sat in stillness? Not because you were tired, not because you were meditating, but because you were willing to feel what you've been outrunning. We live in a world addicted to motion. We celebrate the ones who never stop, the CEOs who rise at 4 a.m., the influencers who post 7 times a day, the parents who manage work, family, fitness, and still smile for the Christmas photo. We've made busyness a badge of honor. But what if it's not honor we're chasing, but escape? I remember tending the garden at my monastery in the hills of Vietnam, under the quiet guidance of my elder, Thay Minh. I was moving quickly, focused, efficient, a younger monk trying to impress, perhaps. He watched me for a while, then said with a soft smile, "Brother, the soil doesn't bloom faster just because your hands rush." His words didn't scold. They revealed. Can you relate to that? Have you ever found yourself hurrying, not because there was a fire, but because you were afraid of what might catch up if you paused? A woman once came to our retreat. She had recently retired. Years of service behind her, a respected name, grandchildren who adored her. And yet, she confessed something few dare to admit: "I have so much time now, and I don't know who I am without a schedule." She had filled her calendar with community projects, morning yoga, even language classes. Not out of joy, but out of fear. Fear of silence. Fear of stillness. She wasn't living. She was managing. She wasn't busy. She was hiding. And now I ask you, is your calendar a reflection of your purpose? Or is it armor against your emptiness? What's the one activity in your day that nourishes your soul, not just your sense of accomplishment? Comment below if that question stirs something in you. I want to hear it. In the Dhamma, the Buddha speaks of samma sati, right mindfulness, not just awareness of your breath or your body, but awareness of your motives. The truth is, busyness is not always a sign of passion. Sometimes it's the most socially acceptable form of avoidance. Even someone as powerful as Steve Jobs understood this. He once said, "It's only by saying no that you can concentrate on the things that are really important." Imagine that. One of the most productive minds of our time, known for innovation and design, found clarity not by doing more, but by choosing less. Let me offer you this reflection. If your hands are always full, how will you ever receive what's trying to reach you? Because life, true life, doesn't just want your attention, it wants your presence. So perhaps it's time not to do more, but to undo what is no longer necessary, not to escape the silence, but to listen to it. And if something deep within you is whispering, "I'm tired of just functioning. I want to feel again," know this: you're not broken, you're awakening. Let this be your first step. Pause, breathe, and ask yourself, am I moving or am I running? Part 2. The stranger in the mirror, losing and finding the self. There comes a moment in life when you look into the mirror and pause. Not because of wrinkles or age, but because the reflection staring back feels distant. Familiar, yes, but not quite you. Have you ever felt that? Like the person you've become is somehow separate from the person you once were? I remember sitting beside an elderly man during a silent retreat in Chiang Mai. He had the presence of someone who had once commanded a room. Upright posture, measured breath, a retired surgeon in his 70s. We shared tea one morning, and after a long silence he quietly said, "I've saved hundreds of lives, but I forgot to live mine." His words stayed with me. We spend our lives building roles: parent, partner, professional. We carry titles like medals, proof that we've done our part. But beneath those layers, there is still a quieter identity. The dreamer, the explorer, the child who once wondered at the stars. And often, that part of us grows silent not from rejection, but neglect. Buddhist wisdom teaches us that the self is not solid. It is like water, shaped by its container, changed by time, flowing endlessly. But when we spend too long being only what others expect, we begin to evaporate. So how do we return? Not with grand reinvention, but with small, deliberate steps. Sit by a tree, breathe. Write yourself a letter, not from the mind, but from the soul. Remember a moment when you felt truly alive, not because you were praised, but because you were present. Then ask yourself, why did that moment matter? And now I ask you, when was the last time you felt fully you? Would you recognize the voice of your younger self if it spoke to you today? You see, the goal is not to abandon who you've become, but to reconnect with who you were and who you are still becoming. Because your story is not finished, it is unfolding, and maybe, just maybe, that stranger in the mirror is waiting for you to finally come home. Part 3. The ghost within, making peace with the unfelt. There are stories we tell, and then there are stories we bury. In Buddhist psychology, there is a concept called Vedana, feeling tones. These subtle impressions arise with every moment, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Most pass without notice. But what happens when they don't? When we suppress, ignore, or turn away from them? They don't disappear. They wait. I once met a woman at a retreat whose eyes carried the weight of silence. Her child had died decades ago. She never spoke of it, never wept in front of others. I had to be strong for everyone, she told me. And so, the pain went underground. It didn't vanish, it transformed. Not into sorrow, but into fatigue. Years later, she said, she was always tired, not in her body, in her soul. That's what happens with unfelt pain. It becomes a shadow, a quiet ghost that drifts through our thoughts, our relationships, our choices, not to harm us, but to be seen. And maybe you felt this too. A memory that lingers longer than it should. An emotion that catches you off guard in the middle of a mundane moment. A sadness with no obvious name. In the practice of vipassana, insight meditation, we are not taught to fight our pain or to heal it instantly. We are taught to sit with it, not to fix it, but to witness it, with compassion, with patience, Because healing begins not when we escape what hurts, but when we finally stop running. Let me ask you, is there a part of your past you've kept in the dark because it was too painful to face? And what might change if, just for today, you sat quietly and said, I see you. I won't turn away this time. The things we bury do not die, but they do soften when given attention. Your pain doesn't want to destroy you. It wants to be honored. So if you've been carrying something for too long, not in your hands, but in your heart, maybe it's time to lay it down, not to forget it, but to finally feel it. And in doing so, discover that what once felt like a shadow was really just a part of you asking to come home. Part 4. The gentle art of simplicity, unbecoming to belong. At the monastery, we live with little, one robe, one bowl, one mat. And yet, I have never once felt poor, because the greatest wealth I've come to learn is clarity, the kind that rises when life is no longer crowded. I once met a retired executive during a weekend retreat. He had run a global company, owned homes in 3 countries, and sat on the boards of charities. From the outside, he had everything. But as we sat beneath a Bodhi tree, he looked at the leaves trembling in the wind and quietly said, I built a life I thought would make me happy. But now that I have space, I realize I don't know what happiness feels like. He began decluttering, not just his closet, but his mind. He sold his second car, gave away most of his clothes, and boxed up a lifetime of awards. He started spending his mornings watching birds at the park near his home. No phone, no plan, just presence. I finally feel like myself, he told me. Not because I added anything, but because I stopped pretending I needed more. That is the essence of santuti. Contentment, not resignation, not giving up, but freedom from the craving that says, this is not enough. We live in a culture that glorifies accumulation, more goals, more gadgets, more visibility. But what if true richness doesn't come from adding, but from subtracting? So I ask you now, what are you still carrying that no longer belongs to the person you've become? What would your life look like if you didn't have to prove anything to anyone, including yourself? Simplicity is not about living with less. It's about needing less to feel whole. In the Dhamma, we are taught not to gather, but to let go, to shed the roles, the titles, the layers of identity we've collected, and return to what is essential, not what impresses, but what aligns. Because when you release what no longer serves you, you create space for what truly matters to arrive. And in that space, you don't lose yourself. You finally meet yourself, clearly, quietly, completely. Simplicity is not loss, it is liberation. Part 5. Suffering as teacher, the path. Through, not around. Pain is not a mistake. It is a part of the path. The Buddha never promised us a life without sorrow. He promised a way to walk through it with clarity and compassion. You may know the story of Kisa Gotami, a mother shattered by the death of her only child. Desperate, she begged the Buddha for a cure. He gently told her to bring back a mustard seed from any household untouched by death. She searched every door, but every family had known loss. She returned with no seed, but with understanding. Suffering, she realized, is not personal. It is universal. I once sat with a grieving widow at a retreat by the sea. Her husband of 40 years had passed a few months prior. Everyone keeps telling me to be strong, she whispered, but what I need is to sit in this sadness just for a while. So we sat together. No advice, no fixing, just breath and presence. And in that silence, something sacred unfolded. Not the end of grief, but the beginning of healing. You see, pain breaks us open, not to destroy us, but to soften us. It humbles the ego. It awakens empathy. It teaches us what no philosophy ever could. So I ask you now, what pain have you been trying to silence? And what if, just for today, you stopped fighting it and simply sat beside it? Because pain is not the enemy. It is the doorway to awakening. Part 6. Living fully, depth over duration. At a Zen temple nestled in the hills of Kyoto, I once asked an elder monk about the secret to a meaningful life. He looked at me gently and said, "The goal is not a long life, but a deep one." We live in a world that praises longevity, legacy, and lists of accomplishments. But the Buddha taught something different. He taught presence, the art of being fully here, even if only for a moment. I met an old carpenter in the north of Japan. He spent his mornings carving tiny wooden birds. No one bought them. No one asked for them. But he carved them anyway. "When I carve," he told me, "I'm not thinking about yesterday or tomorrow. I'm just here. And in those moments, I feel real." That, I realized, is samadhi, the quiet unification of mind and body. When your heart finally catches up to your footsteps. We often ask, what have I done with my life? But the deeper question is, how deeply was I present for it? So let me ask you, when was the last time you did something not to achieve, not to impress, but simply to feel alive in the doing? A full life is not one packed with experiences. It's one infused with awareness. And that awareness, that presence, is available to you now. Not someday, not when everything is perfect, but in this very breath. Conclusion: you're still becoming. What if the most beautiful chapter of your life hasn't been written yet? What if your soul isn't seeking a destination, but permission to begin again, not out of regret, not out of loss, but out of love for who you are right now? You see, healing isn't loud. Awakening isn't grand. It begins in the smallest moment, a deeper breath, a softer glance, a single choice to return to yourself. If you've walked this journey with me, know this: it's not too late, not to feel, not to forgive, not to begin again. You are not your age. You are not your past. You're not the roles the world handed you. You are this breath, this awareness, this open heart, still beating, still listening for truth. The Buddha once said, "Each morning we are born again. What we do today is what matters most." So I ask you gently, if you live tomorrow not from memory, but from presence, how would it feel? If this message met you in a moment of quiet recognition, I invite you, like this video to honor your path. Share it with someone whose heart you feel, even in silence. And subscribe to Mindful Footsteps, where every step is a return to what truly matters. Because you, dear soul, you are not finished. You are still becoming.